Y'all, I am really uncomfortable talking about all this. However, I'm more uncomfortable not talking about it these days for reasons that I will share later. Right now, though, it seems reasonable to talk about how I have evolved into this living logos thing over the past 15 years. And it's going to take a lot longer to talk about that than the why I am that I am and the way I am. So whether or not I believe it, and I'm still on the fence, God and others have made it clear that I actually chose this role between lives. And it's been told to me that this merging of God and I began before I was born, so that God slipped with me right out of the womb and popped into this world and the rest of my life then. And I don't have access to the information that led me to sign up for something like this. I truly don't believe all of the stories about how all things universal are ordered like corporations and bureaucracies. And so I signed a contract for doing something as asinine or bold as this. However, I do think if my personality then was anything like my personality now, I think it may well have said, well, shit, somebody's got to do it. What the hell? And here we are. This re-emergence of a human hybrid God consciousness thing that does not have a name right now is coming forward now for a reason that hasn't fully formed for me yet. But someone somewhere decided a couple of weeks ago that it was time that I started speaking about it. Jesus' assholishness dropping an exclamation point on 9 years of me repeatedly hearing, speak. Speak, child, speak. Speak, with another exclamation point out loud. However, I do know that through the processes that have been evolving in the past few months, a couple of weeks in particular, that I needed to reach a level of spiritual maturity and physical and psychological health to handle the viscerality of these energies joining within the body. It has been quite the thing, involving several different aspects, especially those responsible, practical world things that one does, like me doing all of the things, except now I can't do all of those things. And each day since Jesus popped through on August 31st, I have received new pieces of information, and that I've been inspired to ask more questions. And keep coming back to why it was that God asked me in 2008 how I would define things, period. And I'm talking to you all as if I'm doing talk to text. I still don't know I don't know what to call this, and I can't create something. I mean, I can't make anything up. In the same way, back in the day, I couldn't make anything up about a God, the gods, or any representations of them. God wasn't part of my world, really, except when I was growing up. I mean, he was to a certain extent. I did go to church occasionally. I went to my best friend's church. It was Methodist, and I loved it because in addition to being able to sing Jesus Love Me, which I really loved, there were cookies, and the cookies made the singing and all the other churchy stuff all the sweeter, kind of like they do now. The Unitarian church that I also went to occasionally when I was a kid it was boring. There, it didn't seem to matter whether God existed or not, because it was all about let there be peace on earth. And if there were any sweets, I really don't remember them because I spent most of my time there bored. And the boredom and the peace be with you just overshadowed all other things. It was like there was no flavor. It was bad vanilla. And in the summers, when my brother and I lived in Mississippi with my grandparents, we went to the Antioch Baptist Church. There, I learned to tolerate, mostly, their idea of God, because I had to. I was there all the time. But what I heard then was that God was mean, but not all of the time. Just enough to scare people into behaving so that they could get into heaven. But only those that had been saved from something I never understood could get there anyway. So I thought, well, then what's the whole point of this? I don't know if it was because I had to go to church twice on Sundays, once on Wednesdays, and during revival week, having to go every single day. But it was really hard to like the Baptist way of things. And it was filled with the flavors of fire and brimstone. Unless the timing was just right. And there was the promise of my grandmother's fried chicken after the fact. To me, if I wasn't good enough to get into heaven, because y'all, I was a shit, her fried chicken got me close enough, especially if she made mashed potatoes to go with it. But I had a really hard time understanding why so many congregants, the adults, would be all like praising Jesus and God and then turn around, talk about their neighbors and Black people in such horrible ways. I couldn't get it. To me, it was just like being on the outside and looking in, watching people get all dressed up, praising the Lord, and then forgetting to practice what they say he preached. And then there were just other things that were so confusing about God. Like, it seemed to me like God was God, but God was also sometimes just Jesus. Except when he wasn't, Jesus' last name was Christ. And I couldn't understand for the life of me how anybody could just pop out of a tomb after being dead for 3 days. Unless, of course, they had been zombified. But nobody talked about that kind of thing, and I certainly didn't have the courage to ask about Jesus being a zombie. So I figured that's not how it actually happened, but it was very confusing. And as I moved into an adulthood, I was aware of God when I was cursing proficiently, especially when I was chastised for it. I was aware of God during post-orgasmic discussion with lovers about why it is we holler, oh God, during sex, but all of the stuff around sex was not godlike. I couldn't understand why people would write out God but leave out the second letter as if we didn't know what the second letter actually was. So I didn't know if he existed or if he didn't. But if he did, I couldn't see him being some gray-haired asshole who could turn people into salt, while also being this loving, benevolent father figure at the same time. And there was more than one philosophical discussion about who the knucklehead was that decided that God was a man. But going back to the whole kid thing, perhaps even to the young adult thing, like throwing prayer into the mix really confused things. Because although I don't really pray now, I did when I was a kid. Like, I knew there was a formula to follow. Like, you put your hands together, except when you only have one. And then if you only have one, what does God have to say about that? Because that's not following the rules, right? So anyhow, you put your hands together, and then you said some words, or someone else said some words, or if you were at church, someone else said a lot of words, lots and lots of words. The prayers at Becky's church seemed a lot less mean than those at my grandmother's church. The Unitarian way of doing things just seemed not normal and contradicted the whole don't talk to strangers thing that I tended to get into trouble for when I was a kid. And the whole Catholic prayer thing made no sense. I mean, you're up and down from the kneely thingy, and then there's candles, and then there's costumes, and it was just way too complicated. All of the rules just, if you didn't follow the rules, you clearly weren't doing the right thing with God. And if you clearly weren't doing the right thing with God, then he wouldn't hear your prayers, right? That was what was in my head anyway. But I did. I mean, because somebody in my world had to probably hear my prayers. As a kid, I mean, never mind the fact that I must have been doing it wrong because I didn't think God ever heard me. But I did things like ask my mother to stop hurting us. I asked him to make me a better daughter. I asked him to make me not do the things that made her mad. I asked him to make me smarter, to make me braver, to make me stronger. And I also asked him a lot to make me die. Holy shit, I prayed. I prayed that my brother not get hit by my mother, or that I'd actually hit him really hard because he was 3 years younger than me and we were both shits. I prayed that I not get hurt. I prayed that I never see peanut soup again because I threw that up all over a kitchen table. I prayed my parents wouldn't fight. I prayed that the Redskins would beat Dallas, and it happened. And it was bound to have been divine intervention or Gary Clark, who back in the day, in my eyes, was as close to God as I thought I would ever get. True stuff. I prayed that God would love me when it didn't seem like anybody else did. I remember praying that we not go on another Sunday afternoon country drive. I prayed that I wouldn't have to wear those gross, ugly, purple tough skins jeans. I prayed for bacon, and that bacon would be a sign that God indeed loved me. I mean, it is now, so it must have been true then. I prayed that I wouldn't smell like cigarette smoke when I was a teenager. I prayed that my father wouldn't notice the odometer, also as a teenager. I prayed that my mother would never cut my hair again. I prayed that next Sunday I'd hear Jonathan Livingston Seagull again. I prayed that I would be allowed to shave my legs soon. Dear God, it was Ingrid. I prayed that the angel I saw when I was 12 or 13 would come and save me and take me into the sky with her. I prayed that Travis Claiborne would kiss me. I prayed that I'd understand algebra. I bet my father did too. I prayed that I would die. And I don't know when it was that I stopped putting hands together or kneeling or believing in prayer or God, but at some point I just stopped. God didn't seem to have anything to do with the fact that Travis finally kissed me when I was in college and let me drive his car. Not back in the 7th grade when I was letting him cheat off of my math and Spanish test. Oh, and work, thinking that I would get the kiss. My father definitely saw the odometer. I heard blessedly J.L. Seagull many, many times on Sunday mornings, and I never did, still don't, understand algebra. I fully appreciate not having to shave my legs at all. My mother never touched my bangs again with scissors, but spent a lot of time trying to smash my head in. And it took a long time for me to feel loved by anything. And I never did feel loved by God, actually until a couple of years ago. I'll tell you about that later. I didn't know that I didn't actually understand anything about prayer or God or Jesus. back then. And I didn't even when I first met God. I hadn't decided, I guess I hadn't decided that he existed or didn't. It just wasn't part of my world. And this is one of the confounding things about this, where I am now in this position to be something like this God thing, like this. I don't even know how to describe it because the words aren't going to say it right. I mean, until I actually met him, I hadn't decided on God, if he did or he didn't exist. I hadn't decided on a religion. I thought they were all full of shit. Okay, most of them were. And I never considered myself spiritual. I mean, and I still don't, mostly because of how other people define it and the requirements they have for what it means to be spiritual, especially the accoutrement. Including things like meditation and what you should or should not wear. Like I've never really been an atheist. I think I would consider or have considered myself in the past a deist. Mostly because as I became into this spiritual way of being, I was experiencing deities across many faiths and religions. But otherwise, I just didn't give it much thought. Life was doing life. I was working. I was getting married. I was being married. I had friends. I had things to do. I had a life. I had stuff and things going on for which God and whatnot just weren't part of. Even when God showed up for the first time, there wasn't much to it. He showed up the first time in 2006 in the spring. And I was washing dishes. I was standing at the sink trying to get stuck on salmon skin off of a pan because I had decided to grill and forgot to use the Pam spray. Anyhow, I am washing and scraping and perhaps using spicy language. And an energy coalesced on the other side of the kitchen window. You know, the one that's always above the sink? That one. So I'm there, and I don't know how it is that it was God, but I did. And there was no gnashing of teeth. I was not afraid. I was not speaking in tongues. I wasn't even curious, really. However, I was sure enough of it that I went to interrupt my husband at the time while he was watching MSNBC. I walked in bold as day and said to this geochemist I was married to, I just met God. And he turned and looked at me and I was like, huh? And I thought, yeah, huh? Like clouds didn't part, angels didn't sing, there was no lightning, there was no tears, like I wasn't struck with awe. In fact, the best I could do was echo Ian's huh, and then I just kept on washing the dishes. 2 years went by. And in that 2 years, I left a husband and moved 1,700 miles away from him and landed in Virginia. And before we had the second in the kitchen moment, in the spring of 2008, early spring, this one actually this inspired a bunch of curiosity. Not much, because I didn't have a context. But anyhow, I was sitting at my computer, hoping to find an RFP I could respond to, because back then I thought I was going to continue being a criminal justice consultant. Clearly that did not happen because recession and all of this other whatnot began unfolding. However, I digress. I'm at my computer and I'm doing computer things, and my mouth opens and says, before there was, I was. Now, it was my mouth, my tongue, my lips, and my words, but I didn't say it. I did not say it. Before there was, I was. I got up from my desk. I cleared off my dry erase board. That was my attempt at being organized. And I wrote, before there was, I was. Putting the comma in the appropriate spot. And then I just stared at it. And I stared at it some more. And I stared at it every time I went into my office. But I couldn't even then get much past, because it happened, but I had zero context. I looked at that thing for months until I just wiped that off the dry erase board, because why? I mean, I couldn't figure it out. There was nothing to figure out. However, there were other things that were happening that were just weird. None of them frightened me. None of them really made me angry until God showed up back in the kitchen. And this time, I'm washing the dishes again, rinsing out the coffee pot, and that energy coalesced in front of me on this side of that window. And this time said out loud, not through my own mouth, blessedly, but said in a very clear, audible way, how will you define yourself? Who asked that question and then leaves? And my response was neither kind nor demure. What the fuck are you talking about? I am just fucking Ingrid. And in that moment, while the dog is looking at me because I am hollering, and he doesn't think it's him, but it might be, or at him, but it might be, it was as if the entire universe just went, mm-mm. And I was like, who the heck does that? Who comes and asks us a question like this and then is like, see ya, bye. And that was it. There was no other frame of reference. There was no context. There was no encouragement. There was no other conversation. There was no, hey, you want some help putting the dishes away? But why in the world would somebody drop in the middle of the kitchen, not ask to help, and then just leave? Now, in 2024, I'm understanding why he asked that, because you and I need a touch point, need something concrete, using words, a bunch of letters strung together that has some kind of meaning that's been created in the past for us to root into. I don't have that. It's not formulated for me any beyond this idea of living logos that is too biblical for my comfort, but it is as close, I think, as we can get for the time being. Back then, though, all of this stuff that was beginning through 2008 and pretty much through 2013, there were just these string of experiences that I called following that the universal bouncing red ball. Like this obvious signaling, so obvious, like it's the elementary school red dodgeball smacking you upside the head to get you to pay attention to things. And I've said so many times in my life, I can't make this shit up. I can't. In all of this, though I was angry a lot, I was never afraid. And my curiosity was such that, although I don't think I really got a lot beyond, I tried to get to places beyond the like I bought the books. I bought all of the books that tell you how to be spiritual. Like, God has showed up in my kitchen twice, or at the kitchen twice. And like, I don't know what to do with that. So this must be some spiritual thing that I need to know about, right? So God bless Amazon. I bought so many books. I bought all the books and they kept coming. And I would start reading these books and I'd get a few pages in sometimes, just pushing them off to the side and being like, nope, that's not it. I could sometimes read the inside cover on a hardback and go, yep, that's not it either. Or I'd get into chapter 3 and be like, oh shit, that's some bullshit. So my donate to the library file grew a lot. It grew very quickly. However, there was one book called Quantum Touch. I can't remember who it was written by now, but it was a chiropractor from California. And it was sitting on the coffee table because it hadn't made it to the library pile yet. And an acquaintance came by the house and she said, oh, June Hughes is having a class on that in a couple of weekends. You should go. And I really was like being smacked upside the head by that stupid red ball. And so I went. I borrowed $250 so I could go to this class. Not knowing why I was going, except it seemed so obvious. And I really don't think, like, it never occurred to me that I had a choice. I didn't have a choice in the matter. I was going. But I didn't know why. Like, hello, probation officer, intensive in-home therapist. I had no interest in any kind of healing modality. It was so far from my previous realities that I thought for sure that it couldn't be right. However, so I go to this class. I cuss the 20 miles there. Why the heck are you making me go? Blah, blah. Because that's what it felt like. I felt that there was no way I could say no. None. And that check was my rent money. So I'm scared and I'm pissed and I don't know what is happening, but I'm there and I hand my check over to this woman. And it's $250. And she proceeds to hit play on a video player. Okay. So now she did say, you know, we're going to watch a quick video, but I was pissed because what I had in my head was I have just paid $250 to watch a video. And y'all, that must have been telegraphed across the room, like steam coming out of my ears, like Warner Brothers style. Like the Acme box has been opened in my head. But when this blessedly brief video was done, June looked at me and she said, Ingrid, why don't you show us how this is done? And I was like, wait, what? I still don't even believe in this stuff, really. And for those of you who know anything about healing modalities, like, they're the rules of the game. Like, you have to do X, Y, and Z for 1, 2, and 3 to correspond. And I was like, okay, do I breathe first? Do I visualize first? Do I count first? What do I do? And bless this woman, there were 3 other women in this class, and one of them volunteered to be the guinea pig. So she sat down in the chair in front of me, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And in my head, I closed my eyes and I said, oh, fuck it. And I put my hands on this lady's shoulders, and what moved through me, I mean, it came straight from my belly, and it was straight up liquid lightning. It was hot, it was white, and it was pure, raw power. And I had never, ever, ever felt anything like that. And there was nothing about that was in this book that had the how to do and must do things for this to happen. And out loud this time, instead of in my head, in front of these older ladies, I just said, "Oh, shit," and laughed hysterically. And I kept laughing all the way home because we finished the class. I don't remember any of that part. I remember driving home and just laughing. And I'm like, even these days when I have these striking experiences, I'm like, what in the hell do I do with that? And what I did with that was become healer. I didn't know why. I didn't know how.